Let's declare that in the wealthiest nation on earth, no one who works full-time should have to live in poverty, and raise the federal minimum wage to $9 an hour. We should be able to get that done. Let's tie the minimum wage to the cost of living so that it finally becomes a wage you can live on.
Mr. Boehner, Mr. Ryan didn't exactly look like they were ready to do cartwheels there. But with that, the president put the minimum wage issue back on the front pages. The national minimum wage right now is $7.25 an hour. But each state makes up its own minimum wage, as you know. The states colored in green in front of you, they got a minimum wage rate higher than the federal level. Red states, they have lower ones, and blue states are states that have rates similar to the federal level, as I said, of $7.25. Now you can see that in our region, New York and New Jersey's minimum wage levels are even with that federal standard. In Connecticut, it's $1 higher, but that could soon change. Voters in New Jersey, for example, will vote in November on whether or not to raise the state's minimum wage to $8.25 an hour. And meanwhile, in New York, it looks like the governor might be stepping away from efforts to raise the minimum wage in the Empire State. Now, on Sunday, Governor Cuomo, he indicated that he might remove language from his budget proposal that would have increased the minimum wage to $8.75. Reactions to the proposals, they have been mixed.
We really do have to protect many of our workers, and I think a minimum wage is the most important thing we can do for those workers.
The cost of living is drastically increasing.
I'm firmly against it because it's going to make small business not hire people. I'm not going to hire the next guy. I'm going to do it myself.
To pay someone that's coming out of high school to work a couple hours, a wage that we got paid to manage the store at one point is, in my opinion, astronomical.
I don't think it would be a good idea. It's going to be very hard for a store, mom and pops.
We have a lot more expendable income, a lot of lower middle class families being able to afford more for their dollar. So I think it's long overdue. I think you'll find good results from it. I think we're going to see an increase in profits and an increase in customer.
All right, let me just give you a little math here and we'll bring the table in for this debate. Right now it's $7.25 an hour. If they work full time, it works out to $14.5 grand a year. $14,500 a year, you work full-time, make minimum wage. Now, let's say you raise it to $9 an hour. The new math is $18,000 a year, and just to give that in context, I think most of you can figure it out. You try and raise, let's say, a family of 3 on that, even at the raised minimum wage of $9 an hour, that's still below the federal poverty line for a family of 3, let's say. Okay, you've heard both arguments. I think the people on Region articulated them both pretty well. You need a living wage here, and on the converse side, it would have a deleterious effect on companies looking to hire. Where do you fall?
Well, you heard from Republicans and Democrats, and they weren't all Republicans said they were opposed. These are people that work in the private sector, own small businesses. They're eking out a living themselves, and they're either going to reduce the salaries of some who get paid a little more so they can keep the same number of employed, or they're simply not going to hire some folks. I always ended up voting for the minimum wage when I was in the State House, and I supported it in the federal level. But, I mean, if you take the argument, let's make it $20 an hour.
But I'll flip it. I've had a debate with a couple conservative think tanks who, and at the time it was $6.25, and I think they were talking about raising it to $7, and they said you can't do it for the same reasons. I said, well, what would you set it as? They said, I wouldn't have a minimum wage. Let the market work its way. So I said, so if you're basically a one-company town here and they're going to pay $2 an hour, they said, then that's what the rate ought to be. And they don't believe in a basement
So the bottom line, I support a minimum wage. I think most people do. You just have to be careful you don't go too high and cause unemployment. That's the bottom line.
And is $9 too high?
Frankly, I don't think so. Not here, of course. I don't know what it's like in some other parts of the country where the cost of living is a lot less. I just don't know.
Speak to that, Andrew. Should there be regional rates here? It should be the same in Mississippi as it is in New York.
No. There are going to be differences in laws and differences in rules and regulations for companies that will make one state or one area more attractive than another. But then you wind up with so much differentiation in terms of, well, I'm going to move to the backwoods area where there's nobody there and start my business there because then I can charge a lower minimum wage there. And it just seems like it's being overly manipulative, especially in a financial climate where businesses will do whatever they think they can do to get away with those sorts of things. So, no, I think overall it would be destructive.
But that's describing that somebody's trying to cut every corner to try and screw the worker
Isn't
here,
every
and there is
business
some
doing
of it. But you know what? There are small business owners who say, I can't swing $9 an hour, Dominic. They're saying, you know, I'm struggling to do $7.25 right now, or you get me to $8 if I'm working the fast food or whatever else. My margin's small. You know, I do find myself civil here arguing because every time we've had this debate over whether it's $4.25 an hour or it's like a record player. They can't afford it. They can't afford it. I don't know what the magic number is, but it's always the same argument.
I'm smiling because in covering this issue over 25 years, it's always been the same exact argument on each side of the issue. We need more money to live. And then these small store owners, whoever they might be, and I say that with respect, saying that if we're forced to go up on one salary, I'll have to lay off the entire staff. I mean, we heard the same thing about Obama. You know, if he won re-election, they'd have to lay off staffs. You know, it just seems like it's a very, with all due respect, Congressman, I appreciate the argument, a very simplistic way to hide behind not ponying up on a little more money. Maybe it's my upbringing, the housing projects of New York City, growing up in New York City. I support the $9.
Businesses will always hire their next employee if they think it's going to make them more money. That's a constant. They will always do that. Consumers and employees will not always be able to buy those products if they can't keep up with the cost of living, if they're not getting paid enough.
You have to live. I mean, I'm not saying give somebody a free ride, but you have to live.
But you know both arguments are valid. That's the
yes,
bottom line.
I would
because
agree to
I'm
that.
making the exaggeration. You could make it $20 an hour.
Right.
And even then, it's not a livable wage.
Right.
A higher minimum wage will definitely help those at the lower end of the spectrum and help close the inequality gap. There are some unpredictable results of a higher minimum wage, perhaps increase in inflationary pressures, higher unemployment rate, and again, damage to the economic recovery because small businesses especially won't be able to hire that additional worker because of a higher minimum wage. So they're unpredictables. I don't know if Obama will get a jump to $9, maybe a little bit above $8 or so. But I think 9 is a big leap.
But when you're talking about money to those low-end earners, that's money that almost instantly goes back into the economy because the less money you have, the more it's a necessity, the more you have to spend it.
But it doesn't go to the small businessman, though, that paid it. That's the challenge. It might go to Walmart's, it might go to, but you know what I'm saying?
No, I do, I do. But eventually, the more money that's out there, the more it'll work back.
Think about it for a second. You work full-time right now, you're making $14.5 grand a year. In 2013.
So you know what
that's amazing.
You know what that person's doing? They're doubling up, living with another family. They're doing other things to try to survive because you couldn't live just on 14.
They're going to soup kitchens, they're going to food pantries.
All right. Keep the conversation going online. I'd like you to go to Facebook and Twitter. Tell us what you have to say. What do you think about that minimum wage? You heard different debates, both at the table and also in the field here from residents like you in our region. Is $9 an hour the right amount? Too much? What do you think? We take a quick break. When we come back here, we'll leave the debate about politics. We'll go to sunny Florida here with our own CJ Papa, who is enjoying spring training, or he better be. We'll be more with that after this.